Time for the local business spotlight on City News 570.
And joined this morning by Faisal Susiwala, broker of record with Remax Twin City, Faisal Susiwala Realty. Faisal, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Glad to hear that. So we are into the fall season, the month of October, halfway there. What's the market looking like across the region in October, Faisal?
Well, we've had a little bit of a slowdown since the spring and summer months. And, look at the inflation rate that just was announced this morning at 3.8. So that's indicating that there may be a pause on the Bank of Canada announcement, which is expected October 25th. Now, we're not sure that a pause is definitely going to put some fire back into the market because we've had 10 rate increases since March of last year, and we've had a couple of pauses since then, as we saw earlier this year, which did ramp up the market a little bit into the spring and coming into the summer. But I think people are a little bit skeptical. They're shy. They're sitting on the sidelines right now waiting to see what happens. And again, the mortgage renewals are having a real impact on people's ability to keep up with payment.
Do you suspect with today's inflation numbers that maybe, just maybe, we will hold steady when it comes to interest rates in that announcement next week?
I think there's a very good chance because they had announced that they didn't really want to go over the 5% threshold unless inflation numbers continued rising. There's been an overcorrection, in my opinion. And, when we look at the inflation numbers in Canada, we take into account mortgage payments and we take into account rental payments, which the U.S. doesn't. So if we extract those two payments out of our inflation numbers, we're actually at our target rate of 2%.
How is Canada looking inflation-wise compared to the U.S. or even the U.K.?
I think we're actually ahead. We're doing better than the U.S. and the U.K., primarily because the U.S. and the U.K. do not take into consideration high mortgage payments that we're paying and the rent payments, which have increased significantly. So when you take those two numbers out of the equation, our numbers are actually below what U.S. and the U.K. are. So we're at target. So it's not a fair comparison, really. And Canada, again, in my opinion, is overcorrecting right now. And we're being conservative, which is good because it keeps people in check and keeps our spending in check. But there may be too much too quickly that's happening here, and it's really affecting people's abilities to make their mortgage payments right now.
Faisal, you've talked before about fall and winter and how they've become the new hot seasons for buying a house. Why is that?
Well, traditionally, people, didn't want to buy in the fall and the winter because they were, worried about commuting and they were concerned about getting their kids into school for the September deadline. Now what we're seeing with remote working, people are working from home. They're not commuting into town as much. So they're actually looking at the fall and winter seasons to identify good opportunities to purchase homes because moving is not really an issue. Taking kids out of school is not an issue because they're already settled into certain areas and they're working from home. So this time of year, allows people to have a thoughtful decision without getting into a lot of bidding wars and competitive situations. And the levels of inventory are continuing to rise as a result of the slowdown in the market.
I was talking to a friend just the other day, and he's in the market looking for his first home and was trying to factor in everything, including the stress test. Can you explain the stress test to us and the impacts of it?
Yeah, the stress test was essentially brought in when the rates were, 2.5%. So the Bank of Canada and OSFI wanted to ensure that people could still afford their homes if the rates went up. So here we are, the rates have gone up. And it was a 2% factor that they were putting on there. So if the rate was 2.5%, you had to qualify as if the rate was 4.5% in order to ensure that you could still afford it if the rates went up. But when the lending rate right now is at 6.5% or 6.25%, you have to qualify at 8.25 or 8.5%, which is essentially impossible for people to qualify at the levels of income that we have today. You're not going to be able to qualify for even a $700,000 or $600,000 mortgage when you're qualifying at 8.25% and your average household income is at $108,000.
Faisal, it's great information as always. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Faisal Susiwala joins us, broker of record with RE/MAX Twin City, Faisal Susiwala Realty. You can give Faisal a call anytime at 519-624-5555 or look him up at homeshack.com.